Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Let's Talk ABM with me, Declan Mulkeen, CMO of account-based marketing agency Strategic ABM. ABM is one of the hottest B2B strategies right now, helping companies to win, grow and retain their most important accounts. This podcast allows me to spend some time talking to account-based marketing leaders about their ABM programs and share their insights with other B2B marketers, wherever you are on your ABM. So today I'm joined by Nancy Harlan. Nancy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Sure. Nice to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Not at all. Well, let's give everyone a little bit of an intro to yourself. Nancy, many of you might recognize the name. I actually interviewed Nancy back in August 2021 on episode 20. I had to look it up actually. Episode 29 of Let's Talk ABM. So that's almost 4 years ago that we first met and we first spoke. And that was when you were at Qlik. I think you were head of ABM at Qlik.
Yes.
And since then, you then moved on to UiPath to head up their global ABM program. And if we go back in time, before UiPath and before Qlik, you were Director of Global Demand Center over at Siemens Enterprise Communications. And then I also was surprised when I was looking on your LinkedIn profile the other day, you were even doing sales at IBM when you first started off.
Started in sales. So sales and sales management for IBM. And it really is the quintessential, I think, great place to start when you eventually become an account-based marketer, because you really understand the sales cycle, you understand and have the confidence to be with customers. So I love the fact that I started in sales. I would never not have done that to get to this ultimate point. And when I hire ABMers, I like when they have a sales background as well. I just feel like it just brings their confidence and their knowledge of the sales cycle to a great point.
Yeah, I think I'd concur with you there, really. And also, it's interesting, I've interviewed a lot of people who've either been through that kind of IBM school or I've done a couple of Let's Talk recently with a couple of your ex-colleagues at IBM as well. And It's a real, as I said, a school for learning great sales, great account management, great ABM. So, and as you said, I think sales sets you up for many things. Actually, I used to be in sales as well, like yourself, and I used to, have to earn my crust selling, and you had your good days and your bad days, but you learned a lot from it, really. And I think it makes me a better marketer, I would say, and I think you probably echo that as well, wouldn't you?
I completely agree. I think the best marketers come from sales. And again, the best account-based marketers come from sales. But I also think it's helping me now that I'm back in this space where I'm, packaging up my expertise and doing fractional engagements. I have to go out there and sell myself. And so I have those skills, it's great. Yeah.
So just to finish off on that. So Nancy, having gone through that stellar corporate career through IBM, Siemens, Qlik and UiPath, is now a fractional ABM leader and a consultant for many leading companies. So please do look her up. And if you need some help, she's a great ABMer, and I'm sure she'll do a great job for you. So I think this episode is going to be a little bit different, because obviously most guests I talk to, obviously we talk about their ABM program, we talk about what they're doing, we talk about where they've been on their ABM journey, we talk about what their experiences have been with their current company, etc., and what their plans are. But I think when we were having a chat previously, we kind of came up with a few ideas about how we'd approach this a bit differently. So I think for the audience, I think what we're going to do is talk about three things. First thing we're going to kick off on, we're going to talk about ABM. And I think the way you coined it was ABM as a strategic priority in these rather uncertain economic times. Then we're going to talk about something which is close to your heart, which you've been talking a lot about on LinkedIn at the moment, which is about the myths and misconceptions of ABM, which I write a lot about as well. So we're
both very passionate about what it is and what it isn't.
Yeah. And then I think we'll then finally finish off with something which is also very close to my heart, actually, which is ABM through the customer lifecycle, which I think is something that people need to know a lot more about, rather than thinking about it as the first click, as the kind of winning new logos, but it's actually for the full life cycle. So going back to the first theme, which is ABM as a strategic priority in these uncertain economic times, sounds like a film, actually, that title.
Yeah, it does.
Mm-hmm. Might not fit on the billboard. Might not fit on the billboard in Times Square, but we'd have to shorten it. And the translation, I think, would be quite difficult as well. But obviously, the last few months have been,
interesting.
Thank you. As you're an American, you can say that. Have been in interesting times, but also I think behind that kind of interesting times, there is that kind of, uncertainty in the market. There have been layoffs. There have been, people restructuring their companies. There's been lots of movements. We've definitely seen that people are taking somewhat longer to make decisions, asking more questions, which is rightly so. But let's just talk about that. So in this economic climate that we're living in, we're now in the month that we're recording this at the end of May, 2025. So why should ABM, or some people call it strategic account marketing, why do you think some people should be thinking about this as a priority for CROs and CMOs?
So I go back to the Pareto principle, right? The 80-20 rule. When things get a little bit discombobulated, if you want, uncertain, I think companies should instantly go back to what are we doing to protect, engage, grow our top 20%? Because that rule sits true, whether it was 20 years ago or today. Most companies, 80% of their revenue comes from 20% of their customers. And so what are you doing? How can strategic account marketing really help you, circle the wagons around that 20% to make sure that you're guaranteeing that revenue growth in that important set of customers? So that's the first thing I would be like, CRO, CMO, what are you doing for that top 20%? And how can and should strategic account marketing, one-to-one ABM be part of that? And I think yes.
Love that. I love that. And anybody who mentions Pareto, I love it when anybody mentions funny people, mentioning a 19th century Italian economist.
Yeah.
But, I love that.
And I learned this morning that it rhymes with potato. So that's what I learned. So it's Pareto is my understanding.
Well, there you go. Well, hopefully Italian listeners will correct us on that one. Tomato.
And I apologize in advance if I've offended anyone.
No. No offense. But also you could argue, with what they say about the North American English and British English, right? Two countries divided by the same language, right? So
right.
Tomato,
right.
Tomato, potato.
No kidding.
Right, and I love that about the top 20% and one-to-one. Okay, and then in terms of the kind of, I mentioned it a little bit earlier actually. This kind of, a lot of, although ABM started as a customer growth, customer advocacy, customer penetration strategy, it kind of morphed, particularly over the last few years, into, well, let's use it for new logo acquisition. But going back to your point about these uncertain times, how do you think ABM helps companies make that shift from perhaps thinking about net new, which is where a lot of companies have been thinking about ABM, into that more kind of, I think you might have coined it as deeper share of wallet?
Yep. Those are the words. It is looking at the customer holistically, right? And really defining what is your ideal customer profile. So that ICP a lot of people talk about, it really comes down to, if this is the right customer, why is it the right customer? And part of that has to be that we've gotten some revenue, but we see an opportunity to significantly grow the revenue out of that customer. So for me, ABM in this, 80-20 rule, world think of it as that revenue multiplier. How do we make sure that we're grabbing as much as we can from these customers to make sure that we're protecting them in this important time, but we're also expanding? So that's I call it the revenue multiplier, ABM in that world.
Revenue multiplier. And going back to how people should approach ABM when thinking about, their customers in particular, when they're looking to kind of, particularly in this, uncertain times, retain revenue. One thing is obviously saying hey, let's get some more revenue, but I think a lot of people are a little bit nervous saying we need to retain revenue. Yeah, right?
Absolutely.
We need to retain revenue. We need to retain our customers. We need to make sure that they stay with us. We need to then potentially do our best, as you pointed back to before about the 80-20, to try to expand those customers that are probably less exposed to certain markets at the moment. what would be perhaps from an account selection point of view? How would you, if you were sitting down in your role as fractional ABM CMO, how would you say to people, let's look at your customers and let's work out which ones perhaps are less exposed or more open to expansion?
Yeah, so it comes down to, again, defining that ICP, seeing what that real perfect customer profile looks like, and then applying that, leveraging data to apply to your existing. But it also, don't forget, you have some of the greatest resources on account intelligence sitting in your sales organization and your customer success organization. So for me, when you start to think about how do we really, make sure that we're building an ABM program that's not just focused on, revenue retention, but also resilience and expansion, bring customer success to the table. They need to be part of that swarm. And then I'll also say one of the things that we did both at Qlik and UiPath is in this environment of really making sure we're building an ABM program that's going to drive resilience, retention, and expansion. Make sure you maybe even think about bringing the customer champion to the table, right? I mean, bringing that customer, because you can help them through an account-based program internal to their organization, drive that awareness and demand to, drive up the use of this technology and expand the technology. So my advice is don't forget customer success in your swarm of resources and strategies bringing into the account. They need to be part of it, but also don't forget about engaging the customer champion directly as well. They can be a great assist to you, but you can also be assisting them and making sure they're getting the ROI that they expect from the solution, and they're continuing to grow the deployment of that technology out within their enterprise. So those are my two pieces of advice, making sure that you've got CS involved and the customer champion where appropriate.
No, I love that. And it's very rare to hear that, actually, to mention about the customer champion. And I think it reminds me of a conversation with your old colleague at UiPath, Laura Matthews, who worked with you very closely. And I think she talked about something very similar about the work that you were doing there, actually, with your customers and the road shows I think you were running there.
Yeah, we actually named that program. Like, it was an offering to our top 20% customers where you get an account-based marketer to support you, Mr. Customer, to build an integrated, branded in your brand program that drives awareness and demand. And the position with the customer is, we're going to ensure you get the ROI you expect, but we're going to actually accelerate that. And for us, right, for sales and CS, we're getting into new areas of the business and we're getting an opportunity to grow. So it's a great solution. Again, that 80-20 rule is great, if you got the right champion, you got to have the right champion. But yeah, Laura's an expert as well.
I love that, Nancy. And also the term you used about swarm, I thought it's an interesting term of phrase, really. It's very, very graphic.
Yeah. I think there's been times in my history I actually had the beehive in the middle, and that's the customer and all the bees they're buzzing around, right? It is a swarm because what you're doing is you're not just investing marketing resources in these customers. You have the right seller, right? You have the right customer success person. You have the right technical support people. You're really bringing the best of your company to these customers. And so I call it the swarm. Let's get around them. Let's support them. Let's engage them. Let's be sure that we're aligned to what they're trying to accomplish, while at the same time making sure we're growing that revenue and protecting the revenue stream as well.
Love that. Swarm ABM.
Yeah, there you go.
Could be a new term. Could be a new term that might go viral. You mentioned there about kind of ROI. What, when times are difficult, everyone kind of puts their hands in their pockets and obviously keeps their hands in the pockets. But how do you talk to your customers, or whether of your previous experience or how you're talking to your customers now? How do you talk to them about how you can reflect the measurement and the return? Because obviously with everything it takes time. So what are you saying to people about measuring the work of ABM?
Yeah. It's such an interesting discussion around measurement. It's probably one of the things that I spend most of my time with my chief marketing officers and my leaders, because ABM costs money, right? I mean, it's cost resources and it costs budget dollars. So you're constantly internally having to justify it. So besides like the account engagement levels, and importantly, let me talk about it, Kate. you need to measure net new people. Are you getting to new people, new divisions, new departments, new individuals within the account? So you're going to look at those net new responders. You're going to look really important, looking at net new executive relationships you've established, new buying committee people. You also want to look at high value activities. That's the term I use for it. And those high value activities are, if you're doing all of this, highly customized marketing into it, are these customers spending more time on your website? High value. If you see people swarming over to the website, that's that they're interested. They want to learn more. Are they spending a lot of time on the account portal? Are they going to your customer conference, right? I mean, are we getting them there? Is it enough are we doing the right things that this customer wants to spend money and actually go to the conference? Are they using your learning portal? Are more people from the account actually going and learning how to use your product? So that's one thing. Those account engagement levels is something that I'm constantly measuring. The other thing is progression through the buying journey. You want to make sure, that you're really on top of whether they're going through the buying journey. Are they stuck somewhere? What are you doing to get them unstuck? So really focused on where they are in that process and how you are engaging in that process. And then always, and I've said this before, and I probably said it to you 4 years ago, Deck, was, I measure ABM through revenue, right? I know salespeople don't like me to say this, but I have a quota, right? And an ABMer has a quota. We need to look at what's in the pipeline at the beginning of the year and how are we going to grow that exponentially over the year. So I hold a quota. If it was $1 million, then I need to bring in $3 million in revenue by the end of the year from this set of accounts, and just using those numbers. But it's, that year over year revenue growth. So I constantly measure revenue. How are we helping these accounts grow? And that's really, the biggest thing is revenue growth.
And that, I suppose, for a lot of people, that'd be, well, for business leaders, that'd be music to their ears to hear that marketing want to own a revenue number.
And that's why there's been times that I've actually worked more closely with the CRO than the CMO, because the CRO, we're talking the same language, right? And we're aligned to where they see the greatest opportunity, and we're helping them get there, plus get bigger. And that's why, ABM, again, that intersection of sales and marketing is so keenly important.
No, I love that. And I think the points you make around all those metrics around account engagement are really useful for the audience. I think the points around
it's kind of like you're seeing the energy you're creating in the account, right? You're seeing that energy, and that's super important, because that's an indicator that you're going to buy and they're going to buy more.
Yeah, I would agree. And then obviously the point around the buying journey and the point about the revenue. I think that's great points for measurement. Let's change tack now. And
sure.
We've talked about the uncertain economic times, and who knows what we're in May, so let's see how the rest of 2025. Fingers crossed. Let's hope we're still here in
please,
May 2026.
Yep.
Let's talk. You've been writing a series on LinkedIn, and we talked about it when we were prepping for this interview and talking a little bit. But you've been writing a piece around, or various pieces around, the 5 myths of ABM.
Yes.
And tell us what they are, and perhaps walk us through one or two of these myths. Let us know what you're thinking.
You froze on me. Oh, there you are.
Yeah. So that series. We'll just redo that again. So,
okay.
Nancy, the 5 myths that you've been writing about of ABM. Tell us what they are. Walk us through perhaps one or two of them, and explain what the reality looks like to you.
Sure. So there are 5, and these are the ones that kind of get my American Irish up, if you will, right? So I'm passionate about these things. So here's the 5. I'll just list them out. Myth 1, ABM replaces demand gen. Myth 2, ABM is just a marketing thing. Myth 3, ABM is only for big companies. Myth 4, ABM is a one-time campaign. And myth 5, ABM is just personalized advertising. So those are the 5 myths, and I'll drill down on myth 1 and myth 4 for you, because they, again, make me most passionate about the topic. So ABM replaces demand. It does not. ABM complements demand gen. You're going to hear a lot of terms out in the market called one-to-many ABM, or ABX or programmatic ABM. That for me is just leveraging great marketing technologies to do really, really targeted, great marketing. That's demand, right? When you say one to many, that's casting a wide net. And you may have a target list in that environment, but when you're talking about thousands of accounts, that's one, that's just demand. It's that wide net. So ABM is different. ABM focuses on high value accounts with personalized strategies, unique content, unique messaging, unique value prop, personalized events and campaigns and all executive briefings, all the things that come together. So ABM doesn't replace demand gen. ABM complements demand gen. Without that strong demand gen engine, you're not going to be able to layer over that strategic ABM. So, kudos to my demand gen partners. They're amazing. Couldn't do what they do, but need them in order for me to be successful as an ABM. So that's myth number 1. Myth number 4 is the other one that kind of gets my passion up. ABM is a one-time campaign. I have customers in this consulting world that I'm in now come to me and said, we need you to build an ABM campaign for us, Nancy. And I have to stop and say, let's step back and really talk about what account-based marketing is. If you want a really engaging, integrated, creative campaign, that's one thing. But ABM is not something you launch in Q2 and forget about in Q3. It's not a single push to get a meeting. It's not a flashy, ad. It's a mindset. It's a discipline. It's a strategy. It's a go-to-market strategy. So it's not a campaign. Are campaigns part of it? Yeah. But first, it's a strategy. So those are the 2 myths that kind of get me excited, as you can tell.
No, yeah, definitely. And I think to add to that point, you mentioned about the Irish connection there. I like to say that I like to have that kind of image in my head of a pint of Guinness.
And I love this analogy. I love it.
Yeah, and so I just came to one day, obviously, Irish heritage, we all spend too much time in bars. And a pint of Guinness, obviously, that you've got what we call the black stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the majority. And then on top, you've got the white head, the cream.
Yeah.
And they both complement each other. And one without the other, if you just drink the black stuff, it tastes bloody awful. And obviously, if you just drink the cream, it's there isn't much there. So if you have the two together, then obviously that creates a great pint of Guinness, and it gives you a very satisfying taste. And I think that's whenever I, with the agency where I'm the CMO, whenever we talk to potential customers and we ask them the question, what are you doing? What does your marketing look like, etc. When they say that ABM is going to be one of their main elements or the main element, and everything else they haven't got very much running, that's always an alarm bell for us.
Yeah. It's a time to step back and really start to educate. And that's what I've been doing a lot of these days. It's really educating on that. So
well, education. Also, we very often we push back to people and say we don't think that you shouldn't be talking to an ABM agency. You should be trying to figure out your basic approach to go to market and your basic demand gen, product marketing, brand marketing, event strategy, etc. Because the most successful ABM programs are when there is everything else is in place.
Yeah. The greatest thing is, like, for us, right, is ABM is such a hot topic, right? It's everybody's talking about ABM. I love that. But that also causes a tremendous amount of confusion. And we really need to, as account-based marketing experts, really help define and align people around what it can and can't do.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing our best. I mean, sometimes it's an uphill struggle, but we are doing our best. But also, I think just to add to that point what you just said, if everything else is in place, that means that ABM has some space to breathe. And you just mentioned about it takes time, it's expensive, it can be expensive, but you've got to let it breathe. You've got to let it have some space. And otherwise, if there's too much pressure on ABM, the ABM team or the ABM strategy from day one, it's going to be an uphill struggle.
Yeah,
right?
True ABM takes time. It's not a campaign. It's not short term. It's a strategy, right? We keep coming back to that term. It's a strategy. It's the way you're going to go to market, leveraging an account-based marketing strategy. Yeah.
Well, as you said, Nancy, it's a mindset. It's a discipline. It's a strategy. It's a go-to-market.
Yep.
As you quite eloquently put there. Now, in terms of those 5 that you mentioned, which one, if I have to put you on the spot, which one do you think is causing the most confusion or the most damage inside of organizations that are trying to run an ABM program?
It's number 2, right? So it's a marketing thing. It's not, right? Like we just said, it's not just a marketing thing. It is a go-to-market strategy, right? It has to include sales. It has to include customer success and marketing. It has to have alignment at the executive level within your organization that this is what we are going to do. So when it, I say, the thing, how does this myth persist, right? How does it keep going? And I think it's because of the M in ABM, right? And I talk about this a lot these days, that I think we need to rename it so that it's about, account-based go-to-market. So AB-GTM or strategic account revenue acceleration, Sarah, I don't know, right? Whatever. But I think the M in account-based marketing gets people to think it's just a marketing thing, and it's not. It's just not.
Yes, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I'm on the side of not changing it, because I think, as you said before, it's our job to help people understand it.
Yeah.
There are many companies, as you know, who've changed it to ABX, ABE, strategic account management. As you said, there's a whole. And I always say to people, look, if you want to call it something different, that's fine. The most important thing is that you define what it means to you.
Right. Yeah, it's great.
Define it. What does it mean? If you want to call it something, if you want to call it, stripy yellow pajamas, that's fine. Do that. But just for God's sake, make sure that everyone understands what it is. And I think that's the issue. As long as you can define it and everyone's on the same page and they're all aligned, then you're going to do well. And let's ask one more question around the myths. With these myths, how do these myths impact perhaps the whole adoption and the alignments, particularly with sales? Maybe you've answered it already with the fact that if you have marketing in the title, but getting that alignment with sales, what's been your experience of walking into a room with a whole bunch of salespeople and they look at you and think, oh God, not another marketing presentation?
Yeah, happened many times, right? I think from the uneducated seller or sales organization, again, I agree with you, it's our jobs to educate. They're thinking it's leads, right? Sales are thinking that you're gonna give them some leads, and you're gonna create these leads. You're gonna throw it over the fence to them, and that's just not what it is. It is again, we're banging this drum. It is this strategy, and we have to change the perception with sales. I like to say, it's a team sport, right? And many times when we're selecting accounts to really invest in, one of the things I will raise a flag to a sales leadership is, I don't think that seller is bought in. And unless I have my seller bought in, I'm not going to be successful as an account-based marketer. So, really it's about making sure that it is a true team sport, that we're aligning the swarm, right, around those accounts, and we're focused on it for a period of time. It's not, it's not a 6-month, it's not a 12-month. It's that this is the right account, and we're going to invest over time to make sure we're driving that share of wallet. So yeah, I guess that's what I would say there.
I love that. A couple of questions on that, actually. Let's just role play this for the audience, okay? So you walk into a room full of hard-nosed salespeople, of which you probably had lots of experience with this, and they've all been called and they've been told by their boss they've got to attend, and they're sitting there thinking they should be out selling or whatever. How do you, and you've got a slide on the screen in front of you, or whatever, how in less than a minute or 30 seconds do you actually tell them what on earth ABM is?
So I tell them that it is a strategy to help them be successful, right? So I talk about how we're going to help them be successful. And it again, I as part of that process, I do really hit on deck that ABM is going to be more work for them. It just is, right? They have a new team member that's going to support them. There's going to be things that we need them to do, things that we need them to chase, things that we need their review on. But the focus is, just as any good marketer is, when you walk in that room, you're going to tell them that we're here truly to help you with this customer, and we're going to give you the resources needed to drive awareness and demand in this customer, speak that customer's language, help you get into new areas of the business that you haven't been successful in. That's what our focus is going to be. And you can see in most cases, there's a whole lot of people that get super excited. My slide number 2 in that world is an example, right? I'll say, this is what we did for this customer over 18 months. And this is how we grew the deal from $1 million to $20 million with the sales team. And a lot of them get, whoa, this is so exciting. But when it comes to execution, they're not there. And they don't realize that they've got to step up and be part of the engaging the ABMer as part of the team. So, again, I think, and there have been accounts that have fallen out of my program that should not have fallen out, but they fall out only for one reason. And that's because we cannot get the seller to engage and spend the time with us and make us part of the team. And that's a shame for them. We try, but eventually we just have to walk away. It's not going to work unless they're inviting us and participating.
That's incredible. That's that actually accounts can actually fall out of your program because the seller or just doesn't
absolutely
buy in, right?
Yeah. Again, that whole team sport concept, right? If you're not going to participate, we're not going to be successful. We can run all the integrated campaigns and events and engagement plans and VIP experiences, but you're not participating, they're not going to hit the mark. Yeah. And there's not going to be any energy created through them without the seller.
And Nancy, a question, you probably got something in your mind, but what's been that one thing that a salesperson or a CRO or one of the kind of, senior people have said to you that has really made you say, wow, that's incredible. I'm so happy that we've actually made a difference. What's, from a commercial point of view, can you remember something that somebody said to you?
Yes. So it wasn't the CRO or the seller, it was the customer. So we had a sales kickoff at UiPath, and the customer stood up on stage, didn't talk about me, talked about my ABMer and how that ABMer helped her drive significant awareness within her organization of her strategic initiative around automation, right? Which is, UiPath is focused on agentic automation. And I am an emotional, passionate person. And I will tell you that I was sitting in the audience and I had no idea that this woman was going to talk about the account-based marketer and the account-based marketer's impact. I had tears in my eyes because it's the culmination, right? It's the culmination of, look at how this works. This works when you have a customer talking about it. It works if you get the right alignment, if it is a strategy, if you've got the right accounts, if you've got the right resources and the right ABMers to engage, you can make a significant impact. And that was joyous to me, absolutely joyous.
No, it's beautiful. That's beautiful to hear. And let's move on to the last theme we're going to talk about today, sure. which is about the customer lifecycle. And obviously, we mentioned at the top of the show, a lot of people have been thinking more about ABM as a net new strategy, whereas obviously its origins are actually within customer expansion, customer growth, customer advocacy, etc. But going back to that point around lifecycle, how do you see ABM extending beyond acquisition?
Yeah,
into the full cycle.
Yeah, so I think if you think about ABM as just getting the order, you're leaving a lot of revenue opportunity on the table, right? That's where that partnership with customer success really can kick in. It shouldn't stop at the order. It should now continue to make sure, we talked a little bit about this, it needs to continue to make sure that, you're continuing to create, awareness and demand in that account for particular use cases. If you landed in finance, what are you doing to educate and engage HR? What are you doing to educate and engage supply chain? Those things need to keep going, because as customer success drives deployment of that original order, you're now making sure, there's more opportunity being identified, but B, you're also helping educate and identify new champions within that business. You're helping educate the masses as to what the value prop is and get people to start raising their hands saying, I want this, I need this here and there. So, it can't be that account-based marketing just stops at the order. If you do that, you're just missing out on the revenue that really ABM should be, driving.
I love that. I think that's a great quote for a t-shirt. ABM can't stop at the order. I love that.
There you go.
It's very catchy,
Yeah.
And what would you say some of the most effective strategies are then in those kind of different stages that go on, past the conversion, so to speak? There's typically in the kind of the infinity loop that a lot of people have seen.
Yeah.
The typical 4 or 5 stages that go on. So what we say are kind of the typical ABM strategies that you can deploy then?
So whether you've got that great customer champion to work with or not, you're going to now transition from the seller being the leader of the band, if you will, right? The leader of the swarm, the king bee, to the customer success person being that person. So now you're going to transition as an ABMer into how are we warming and engaging the people who were originally targeted and why they bought the solution. So again, using that example, the customer bought the solution to support their finance department. Great. We're going to help the CS person get the finance people, top down, bottom up, engaged and excited about what's coming. So you're going to get them, into a room. You're going to do some fun stuff with them. You're going to, at the same time, educate them as what's coming, start making them compete against each other as to best use cases they can build, right? So you're creating the energy and the engagement and the awareness in the land department. But at the same time, you're going out and you're starting to talk to other areas of the business saying, hey, look what we're doing in finance. Look at the value we're delivering in your finance department. Come learn about how we can do the same thing in HR, supply chain, legal, wherever. So it really is about creating, supporting the deployment, getting people happy, but it's also about the same time going out there and leveraging the success you're having in that land to build more energy outside that land for that next renewal and the renewal after that.
I love that. And I've just written down here a couple of things. There's a word that you keep on saying, which is I haven't heard it that much, and it's the word energy. And everyone hears about engagement, everyone hears about awareness, drive engagement, drive awareness, but I don't think I've heard anybody say, let's drive some energy or let's create some energy. And I think that's quite novel.
It is. And you can measure energy, right, through a lot of the things that we talked about initially with the KPIs. You can measure net new responders. You can measure time on the website, time at your customer conference. You can measure all that. That's a clear indicator of energy. But when you have if over a period of 8 months, you have an ABMer that has created so much energy and engagement that you can have an event in a hotel with 500 people from this account with main stage and breakout rooms and lunch and cocktails. And if you can create that kind of energy with ABM, you're going to drive wild successfulness because it's palatable in a room. When the customer, beyond that initial champion or that IT group or the original land department, when you can bring, because you've created so much energy in the account that you've got people flying in to participate in a main event, like its own customer conference. It's completely palatable, and I have seen that happen so many times. If you give us enough time, we'll get you there to be able to really visually see the energy. And have it result into the customer talking on a main stage about how amazing the program was to support their goals. It's super fun.
Love that. And then the other thing you said, which I loved, was hey, look what we're doing with look what we're doing with finance. Come learn.
Yeah.
So that kind of education piece about learning, I think, is for the whole. As you go back, because it goes back to my conversation with your old colleague Laura about the fact that once you've got to get the education right to go jumping across departments, right? So
Yep. And you have to quantify results, right? You have to be able to tell the story to the new department about the value we're delivering in the first one. And so as CS is building that value and quantifying that value, you're taking it from CS and you're building campaigns to go into other areas.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Love that. I love that. So, Nancy, one more question around the customer life cycle. And I think you hinted at it there, but in terms of the measurements, we talked earlier about other types of measurement, but is there anything different when you're looking at measuring retention, loyalty, advocacy? Is there anything that you kind of look to tick off?
Yeah. So when you start to partner with customer success for your ABM program after that initial land, you're going to start to have on your dashboard more metrics that are aligned to product adoption rates, right? You're going to focus on that. You're going to start to look at renewal rates. You're going to look at customer advocacy, right? Are these customers that you're investing in, these resources, are they actually, giving that value back to you, not just through revenue, which is super important, but through advocacy? Are they becoming your main speakers? Are they the ones that are talking about your brand and your value outside in the market? So adoption rates, renewal rates, and advocacies, those are the things that I'll start to look at after we've landed that big deal and we now are focused on the expansion.
Love that. I think three very easy things for people to remember: adoption rate, renewal rate, advocacy rate.
Yep.
Let's just finish off. I like to ask all guests 4 rapid fire questions. I'm going to ask you a quick question, and I expect a quick answer. So,
okay.
That's
not one of my strengths, Dick.
Well, we'll do our best. We'll do our best. I won't give you any negative points for long answers. What's been your greatest ABM learning?
In the last 12 months, it's the power of AI. AI is going to close the loop for the last mile. It's not just about account selection and intent signals. AI in ABM now enables you to create the unique value prop, message customization, and real-time content packaging. It is going to allow you to be in market with more accounts faster and cheaper. Amazing.
I mean, I kind of deliberately haven't spoken about AI because we were talking about the three themes, but it's fascinating that you bring that up at the end of the show, Dan. And also, I think the way you've actually explained it in terms of it's going to close the loop, I think is a very eloquent way of putting it, actually, in terms of faster to market. And that's one of the things that perhaps has held ABM back, is not getting quick enough to market, right?
Yeah, I think every CMO I ever worked with, not CROs get it faster for some reason in my world, but the CMO was always saying, Nancy, you're too expensive. You're only focusing on 100 accounts and you've got this number of people on your team and you need $1 million in program, whatever it is, right? What AI is going to do for us is going to allow us to keep that highly focused, strategic, and messaging and content and engagement and energy. But we're going to be able to, an ABM is going to, instead of having 12 accounts, they're going to have 30 accounts because they're going to be so much more efficient. And so super excited about what I'm seeing in the market today about ABM and AI.
That's great to hear. Let's move on. That was a short answer. Let's move on to the next question. What is the hardest part of ABM in your opinion?
Okay, selecting accounts is hard, measuring what really matters, but I'll say keeping the cross-functional alignment. Again, we've talked about this 1,000 times now. Team sport. We have got to understand it is not a campaign. It is about keeping that executive cross-functional support to the program. If you can keep that, not for 3 months, not for, a quarter or 6 months, then you're going to, really, really drive success. That's the hardest part, is making sure everybody stays on on board with the strategy and continues with that process.
Love that. And I think the next question I ask everybody, but I think we've already answered it in terms of the greatest misconception about ABM.
It's not a campaign. It's not personalization, right? It's a strategy. It's a go-to-market strategy. Yeah.
And the last question, obviously, I ask everyone is that you get a phone call from an old friend, from your IBM, Siemens, UiPath, somewhere in the past. And they say to you, Nancy, I've got to deliver a presentation on Monday morning to my CEO about an ABM strategy. And they say to you, Nancy, what's the one thing I mustn't forget to include? What do you say to them, the one thing to include?
Why? Why are you doing this, right? You can't talk about the technology. You can't talk about the accounts. You can't talk about the program structure. You have to deliver a really quantifiable answer to why do we want to do this? So that's the thing. Answer those questions. Why are we going to do this? What is the impact we expect it to make? What problem are we trying to solve? What opportunity are we trying to capture?
That's a great way to finish off, actually, with the why. And I think people always think very often about the what and the how. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily always answer the why. Nancy, thanks so much once again, 4 years later, to sharing your ABM wisdom with us. And good luck with all your the consultancy projects you're working on. And
Thank you.
We'll be all following you and all your lovely posts. So I recommend everyone to connect with to Nancy and to follow her amazing posts on LinkedIn. Nancy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Talk soon.
Talk soon. Thanks. If you enjoyed this episode of Let's Talk ABM, be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted. Feel free to rate and review this podcast. Thanks so much for listening.